Welcome to Duple High, the absolute worst school in the nation where peace is just a myth. It's a total war zone where fighting never stops, and historically, not a single soul has ever managed to conquer this place. That is, until Ryu Woojin showed up, looking like he just finished a solo raid on the entire student body. In this brutal hierarchy, strength is the only currency that matters, and Ryu is clearly the richest guy in the room. Because when you're this overpowered, you don't just follow the rules, you rewrite them to get whatever you want. Meanwhile, our glasses-wearing protagonist is having a total meltdown, clearly frustrated by something he just saw. He's pacing around his room, looking like he's trying to process some seriously bad news while clutching his glasses. Suddenly, he loses his footing and takes a clumsy tumble, looking like a complete goofball in the process. Just as he hits the floor, a taunting voice rings out, mocking him for his failure and instantly making his blood boil. His sister bursts into the room to rub salt in the wound, prompting him to snap and demand she leave him alone. The sister leans in with a grin, eager to see what kind of feedback her brother is struggling with on his screen. She immediately starts cackling, pointing out that his work is getting rejected for having way too much action in a romance story. She continues to roast him for his poor creative choices, while he sits there looking absolutely defeated by her brutal honesty. He finally admits the truth, revealing that despite his tough exterior, he's actually a massive fan of romance and wants to be a webtoon creator. The sister sighs, blaming herself for his lack of social skills, while imagining a hilarious flashback of him as a baby obsessed with books. She doesn't let up, though, mocking him for thinking a guy who only knows how to throw punches could possibly understand the nuances of love. She starts playfully slapping his head, teasing him about whether his tough guy followers know their boss is actually a total nerd. The atmosphere shifts instantly as he grabs her arm, his expression darkening as he warns her not to push her luck. He stares her down with intense, glowing eyes, questioning if she really thinks he wouldn't actually hit her. And just like that, he proves his point by launching a lightning-fast kick, showing he's definitely not playing around anymore. She doesn't hold back, pinning him down with a brutal display of physical dominance that leaves him screaming in agony. She mocks his transformation into a school delinquent, clearly enjoying the chance to put her little brother back in his place. She brings up their shared history of roughhousing, laughing as she relives the memories of constantly beating him up. He's absolutely fuming, muttering under his breath that he'd settle the score if they weren't related by blood. With him completely subdued on the bed, she smugly demands that he go out and fetch her some late-night snacks. She's in a great mood, shamelessly admitting that she's just riding the high of a massive sugar rush. He calls her a pig while his phone screen flashes a notification, showing he's already down a significant amount of cash. Later on, he finds her chilling in the living room, completely obsessed with watching the same movie for the millionth time. He questions her sanity for rewatching the same flick, but she doesn't even blink, insisting that true art never gets old. He looks on with a mix of disbelief and resignation, clearly questioning his own life choices while she stays glued to the screen. The sister casually chews on a stick, looking at her brother with a smug expression as she asks what he thinks makes a romance story truly great. He tries to play it cool, claiming it's all about the sweetness between the leads, and even uses a classic movie seen as his prime example of top-tier romance. She immediately shuts him down, pointing out that his example is literally just two guys brawling, which is honestly hilarious given his obsession with the genre. She then hits him with the ultimate reality check, suggesting he stop daydreaming and look for inspiration in his own chaotic school life. The mention of school triggers a flashback to the absolute dumpster fire that is Duple High, where the students are busy grabbing each other's faces in a weirdly aggressive display. She mocks his idea of a bromance, but he's quick to clarify that there is absolutely nothing romantic about the constant violence at his school. She pushes back, insisting that since the school is a total mess, the all-boys environment is clearly the root of all his creative problems. He tries to defend his situation, but she cuts him off, demanding to know what they actually do at school if they aren't busy being romantic. He bluntly explains that the only thing they do is fight, and the visuals prove it as he launches a flying kick at a classmate. When she presses him on what the teachers do, he shows her a stern-looking educator who seems just as caught up in the madness as the students. The teacher is absolutely losing his mind, shirt shredded and muscles bulging as he screams for a fight. Ryu Woojin's sister is completely spiraling, clutching her head in disbelief at the sheer absurdity of the situation. She tells him he's a total loser for trying to force romance into a story that clearly belongs in the action genre. Ryu sits there, chin in hand, finally starting to realize that his toxic environment might actually be the problem. He starts daydreaming about a normal co-ed school, imagining himself finally living out those cliché romance tropes. He turns to his sister with a look of pure determination, ready to make a massive life change. He drops the bombshell that he's transferring out, leaving his sister completely stunned by the sudden announcement. She tries to be supportive, but immediately pivots to the terrifying reality of trying to leave Dupal High. Ryu doesn't even flinch, coldly confirming that he knows exactly how brutal the school's policy is for deserters. He knows the school will hunt him down like a dog, but he's clearly ready to face the consequences. There is only one way to leave Dupal High with your honor intact, and it's a path paved with absolute carnage. You have to prove you aren't just running away because you're weak, which is a tall order in a school built on violence. Ryu Woojin dismisses the gravity of the situation, showing off a fresh, bloody hand injury like it's just a minor paper cut. The requirement is simple but insane. You have to single-handedly defeat all 500 students of Dupal High. Masuho, a first-year student, is left gasping for air as Ryu looms over him, clearly having just been on the receiving end of a beatdown. Masuho desperately questions why Ryu is doing this, his voice trembling as he stares up at the guy who just wrecked him. Ryu just shrugs it off, coldly stating that this school simply cannot provide him with what he is looking for. Masuho completely loses his mind, screaming in shock and wondering if he's witnessing the birth of a new rival who plans to conquer the entire country. Ryu doubles down, insisting that the school is fundamentally lacking, while Masuho gets visibly triggered by the insult to their institution. Masuho offers to get him whatever he wants just to stop this madness, but Ryu drops the final blow. He is only interested in finding real romance material. The scarred student stares into the void, his mind clearly reeling from the sheer insanity of Ryu's ultimatum. A few days later, the scene shifts to the much more civilized halls of Danyong High School, where the air doesn't reek of violence. The teacher stands before the class, casually announcing that a new transfer student is about to join their ranks. Ryu Woojin walks in, looking like a total heartthrob in his sweater vest, though his lack of a backpack has everyone whispering. He tilts his head back, soaking in the peaceful atmosphere and savoring the fact that he's finally escaped the hellhole of Dupal High. He can't help but gloat about the lack of cigarette smoke, acting like he's just stepped into a literal paradise. In a flash of inspiration, he whips out his secret weapon, the romantic note, and starts scribbling down ideas like a man possessed. He's absolutely buzzing with excitement, convinced that this co-ed environment is the ultimate goldmine for his romance webtoon. He gets a little too carried away, cackling to himself while the teacher watches on, clearly wondering if he just let a lunatic into his classroom. The teacher finally snaps, sarcastically offering to handle the introduction since Ryu seems way too busy living in his own head. Ryu stands there, genuinely stumped on how to introduce himself since he's never had to play the role of a normal transfer student before. He decides to ditch the polite act and goes full delinquent mode, flashing a predatory grin and demanding to know who runs the show. The entire cafeteria erupts in panic, with students screaming that a total psycho has just invaded their peaceful lunch hour. Giho and his crew watch the chaos unfold, clearly unimpressed and wondering why this guy is acting like he's stuck in a cheesy period drama. Giho rests his head on his hand, looking bored out of his mind while his friend nervously asks how they should handle the situation. A close-up reveals Giho's slight smirk as he acknowledges that the new guy is definitely trying way too hard to make an entrance. Meanwhile, two students are trying to enjoy their meal when they notice an empty seat, only to realize who is sitting nearby. They quickly decide to bail and find another table, whispering to each other that the new transfer student is a total freak. Ryu sits alone, looking like a brooding villain while the other students mock him for his outdated thug-like behavior. Ryu stares blankly into the distance, realizing that his grand plan for finding romance material is failing because nobody will even talk to him. Ryu is spiraling, wondering if he needs to start conducting actual interviews to get the romance material he's so desperate for. Suddenly, a girl taps him on the shoulder, leaning in close to tell him he looks even better in person. Ryu is completely caught off guard as she explains she's heard the rumors about him and just had to see what he was all about. He stares at her, genuinely confused, as she clarifies that the rumor is simply that he is incredibly handsome. She introduces herself as Yu Mina, a second-year student here at Danyong High, flashing a charming smile. Ryu's eyes widen in shock, his heart suddenly hammering against his ribs like he's just taken a massive hit to the chest. He's completely disoriented by this sudden, unfamiliar flutter in his chest, wondering what on earth is happening to him. Mina offers to show him around the school, admitting with a shy grin that she really just wants to get closer to him. Ryu is absolutely losing his mind, convinced that this interaction is the golden, high-quality romance material he's been hunting for. She happily points out the directions to the music room and the PE storage room, completely unaware that she's just become the star of his webtoon. Ryu Woojin is completely zoned out, scribbling away in his notebook while someone tries to get his attention. He finally snaps back to reality, confirming he heard the mention of the PE storage room and frantically jotting down notes about building intimacy. Yu Mina wraps up the tour, casually mentioning that the PE storage room is the only spot left, though it's rarely visited. Ryu's brain hits a massive speed bump when she drops the bombshell that local couples love to use that room for their private business. His eyes bulge out of his skull, his entire worldview shifting as he processes the implications of what she just said. Mina immediately panics, waving her hands and begging him to forget she ever brought it up. But Ryu isn't having it, suddenly lunging forward with intense energy, demanding she repeat exactly what she meant. He looks like he's just discovered the Holy Grail, his face lit up with pure, unadulterated shock and excitement. He takes off at full speed, sprinting toward the storage room like he's charging into the most important battle of his life. His internal romance radar is going absolutely nuclear, convinced he's finally found the ultimate setting for his masterpiece. Ryu Woojin is absolutely vibrating with manic energy, convinced he's about to strike gold in that storage room. Meanwhile, back at the wreckage of Dupal High, the remaining students are still reeling from the fact that their local legend actually managed to escape. They reflect on the brutal, ironclad rule that forces anyone wanting to leave to essentially dismantle the entire school's hierarchy. It's honestly hilarious to them that a guy who could crush anyone in his path is doing it all just to chase a dream of being a romance author. They acknowledge that Ryu is a total legend, but they can't help but worry about how he'll handle the social dynamics of a normal school. They joke about the possibility of some random punks trying to start trouble with a guy who treats human beings like punching bags. The conversation takes a dark turn as they realize that anyone foolish enough to mess with Ryu is in for a world of hurt. A group of thugs is already waiting in the shadows, looking like they're ready to ambush someone, completely unaware of who they're dealing with. They're plotting to lure the new transfer student into a trap, thinking they can just jump him like any other unsuspecting victim. They don't realize that by inviting him to the PE storage room, they've just handed him the exact romantic cliché he's been dying to experience. Yumina tries to play it cool, laughing off the situation while insisting she has absolutely no connection to the new transfer student. But her confidence shatters instantly when a hand slams against the wall right next to her, forcing her to flinch in terror. The aggressor looms over her, his eyes cold and menacing as he reminds her that her peaceful school life is only possible because of his permission. Mina stares back, completely paralyzed by the sudden shift in atmosphere and the blunt threat hanging in the air. Meanwhile, the transfer student is oblivious to the danger, scribbling away in his notebook while standing near the storage room. Mina watches him from afar, noting that despite his reputation, he doesn't actually look like a typical bad guy, just a total weirdo. She suddenly realizes the gravity of the situation, panicking as she wonders if she's inadvertently becoming an accomplice to school violence. She thinks about her own social media career and how her looks are her only real asset for making a living. The thought of a bullying scandal destroying her online reputation sends her into a full-blown mental breakdown. The bully leans in even closer, his intense gaze locking onto her as he demands to know if she's forgotten who really runs this place. The tension is thick enough to cut with a knife as a hand clenches tightly, signaling that the sister is about to drop a heavy truth. She looks absolutely desperate, practically begging her brother to just pack his bags and transfer out of this nightmare before it's too late. Ryu Woojin doesn't hesitate for a second, launching himself forward with explosive speed toward the school building. He ignores her frantic warnings about what lies inside, his focus locked entirely on the target ahead. With a massive, earth-shaking impact, he slams through the door, completely disregarding the danger of Kang Gi-ho's gang waiting on the other side. Meanwhile, the influencer's world is crumbling as her online reputation gets shredded by a wave of brutal hate comments and public mockery. Ryu enters the fray with a manic grin, his fist cocked back and ready to turn someone's face into a canvas for his frustration. He connects with a brutal, lightning-fast strike, sending his opponent flying backward in a blur of motion. Ryu stands over the wreckage, his expression unreadable as he realizes he might have bitten off more than he can chew in this specific encounter. The bullies immediately start laughing, mocking him for his perceived weakness while they surround him to finish the job. The aggressor mocks the new transfer student, pointing out that despite all his posturing, he hasn't landed a single blow on them. Kang Gi-ho watches the scene with a cold, unbothered expression, clearly unimpressed by the chaotic display unfolding before him. A sudden shift in the atmosphere catches Gi-ho off guard, as he realizes something about the situation feels completely off. He observes the familiar pattern of violence, noting how the group gangs up on their victim with practiced, brutal efficiency. He watches as some victims break down in tears, begging for mercy before the first punch is even thrown. Others, driven by a desperate need to save face, lash out in a frantic, losing battle to protect their pride. But Ryu Woojin is a different breed entirely, standing there unfazed and completely ignoring the violence surrounding him. Instead of fighting back or begging, he starts rambling about his disappointment that the situation turned into a bromance rather than a romance. Giho is visibly rattled, clutching his head in total confusion while demanding to know what kind of twisted logic that is. Ryu cuts the conversation short with a sudden, violent strike, insisting that he actually has a girlfriend to get back to. Ryu Woojin finally realizes that his desperate hunt for romance material has backfired spectacularly, landing him right in the middle of a trap. He stares up from the floor, processing the harsh reality that what he thought was a romantic setup is just a standard, brutal duple high-style beatdown. He wonders if his plan to endure the violence silently will actually clear up the massive misunderstanding he's created. He clings to the hope that his secret notebook is still safely tucked away under his clothes, hidden from his attackers. The thugs discover the hidden notebook, and one of them casually demands that Ryu hand it over for inspection. They mock the title, questioning why he's carrying around a material note that looks like it's never even been used. The bullies start reading his private thoughts aloud, laughing at his obsession with co-ed schools and his weirdly specific plans for building intimacy. They continue to roast him, mocking his creepy hobbies and laughing at the idea that he's actually stalking Yumina for his webtoon. One of the thugs demands that Ryu hand over his pride along with the book, taunting him to beg for it back. Ryu obediently mutters a request, prompting the bullies to laugh even harder at his total lack of self-respect. The bully sneers at Ryu, clearly amused that their silent punching bag has finally decided to open his mouth. Ryu doesn't back down, calmly admitting that while they can beat him to a pulp, there is one thing he absolutely needs back. His eyes glow with a dangerous, focused intensity as he demands the return of his precious notebook. Meanwhile, the conversation shifts to a rooftop, where Jinjin recalls his own brutal encounter with Ryu Woojin back in the day. He admits that Ryu completely destroyed him, leaving no doubt about who the real powerhouse was in that fight. Jinjin reflects on their first meeting, noting that it happened shortly after he transferred to the school. He remembers finding Ryu sitting all by himself, scribbling away in a notebook that he assumed was just a hit list. The flashback reveals Ryu was actually writing down ridiculous romance tropes, like the idea that cracking a wall makes a wall slam more romantic. Jinjin admits he snatched the notebook away just to see what the fuss was about, leaving Ryu completely baffled by the sudden theft. Back in the present, Jinjin claims he can't remember what happened after that, despite his friend's desperate pleas for him to jog his memory. Ryu Woojin's eyes widen in a sudden, chilling realization as the memories of the brutal beatdown come flooding back. He recalls the aftermath of the carnage, standing alone in the wreckage with his body soaked in blood after a grueling day of fighting. Back in the present, he remains pinned on the ground, staring up at the group of thugs who are clearly enjoying his misery. With a voice cold enough to freeze the room, he issues one final warning to his tormentors. The aggressor just laughs in his face, mocking him for trying to act tough while he's clearly at their mercy. The bully pretends to offer the notebook back, but it's just another sick game to toy with his emotions. In a flash of pure malice, the thug tears the pages of the notebook to shreds right before Ryu's eyes. The paper scatters like confetti as the bully tells him to pick up the pieces himself, clearly relishing the humiliation. His cronies chime in, cruelly joking that if he had just begged a little harder, they might have spared his precious book. As Ryu tries to move, the aggressor grabs him, sneering that the beatdown is far from over. Ryu Woojin snaps back into action, delivering a bone-crushing punch straight to his tormentor's face. The impact is so brutal it sends the bully spiraling through the air, completely caught off guard by the sudden retaliation. The rest of the gang watches in absolute horror as their leader is sent flying across the room like a ragdoll. The bully crashes into the furniture, his body limp and his mind clearly struggling to process the sudden reversal of fortune. Ryu doesn't give him a second to breathe, lunging forward to grab him by the hair with a look of pure, cold intensity. He follows up with a devastating knee strike, ensuring the guy regrets ever laying a hand on his precious notebook. The bully lets out a choked, agonizing sound as the force of the blow leaves him gasping for air. Ryu looms over him, his expression calm and collected as he demands to know if his opponent is finally ready to talk. The bully can only whine about his broken nose, realizing too late that he picked a fight with a total monster. Ryu dismisses the pathetic pleas for mercy, coldly reminding the remaining thugs that this is barely even a warm-up. Ryu Woojin unleashes a lightning-fast strike, completely catching his opponent off guard while the other student watches in sheer terror. With the grace of a seasoned fighter, he effortlessly deflects an incoming attack, his eyes locked onto his target with cold precision. He closes the distance in a heartbeat, grabbing his attacker and preparing to deliver a lesson in pain that he won't soon forget. Despite the chaos, Ryu remains eerily calm, his expression barely shifting even as his opponent tries to stammer out a pathetic defense. He winds up for a massive, bone-rattling punch, putting every ounce of his pent-up frustration into the swing. In the background, another student sits in the shadows, watching the carnage unfold with a look of dazed, silent shock. Ryu's gaze sharpens as he spots a weapon nearby, his hand reaching out to claim it and turn the tide of the brawl. He lunges forward again, his fist blurring through the air as he continues to dismantle the group with surgical efficiency. He lands a crushing blow to his opponent's midsection, forcing the wind out of them and leaving them doubled over in agony. Finally, he turns his attention toward the next challenger, his cold, piercing stare making it clear that the fight is far from over. Ryu Woojin takes a brutal, full-force swing from a metal bat directly to the head, yet he barely even flinches. The aggressor is absolutely losing his mind, demanding to know why this guy is still standing and acting like he's some kind of secret boss. Ryu just stares back with those glowing, terrifying eyes, completely unfazed by the fact that he's bleeding from a direct strike. The bully is visibly shaken, his face contorting into a mask of pure confusion as he realizes his best shot did absolutely nothing. Ryu calmly inspects his own hand, looking at the blood like it's just a minor inconvenience while the bully stares in total disbelief. The camera pans to the metal bat, which now sports a massive, ugly dent right where it connected with Ryu's skull. The bully is spiraling, staring at the damaged weapon in his hands and wondering how on earth a human head could be harder than solid steel. Ryu starts reciting his own notes, coldly pointing out that these cowards always rely on weapons because they're too weak to fight fair. The bully is trembling now, completely overwhelmed by the realization that he's just poked a sleeping monster. Ryu flashes a blood-stained, predatory grin, thanking the guy for the great material and making it clear that the real nightmare is just beginning. Ryu Woojin ruthlessly grabs his opponent by the collar, his grip tight enough to make the guy panic and beg for a moment of his time. The terrified student tries to de-escalate the situation by offering an apology for the previous assault, but Ryu is clearly not in the mood for small talk. Ryu stares him down, questioning the validity of that apology while his eyes burn with an intensity that suggests he's far from finished. He coldly dismisses the idea that this is just a normal part of school life, making it clear that he doesn't accept such excuses. Ryu declares that anyone who dares to lay a finger on his precious research material is going to face his absolute wrath. The bully is completely blindsided, horrified to learn that this entire beatdown was triggered by nothing more than a notebook. Ryu delivers a crushing blow, his fist connecting with such force that it leaves his opponent reeling in total disbelief. Meanwhile, Yumina stands nearby, watching the chaos unfold and realizing that her own future is looking pretty bleak. She contemplates the desperate move of begging the transfer student for mercy, hoping to avoid any legal fallout from the day's events. Just as she processes the violence, Kang Gi-ho makes his presence known, leaving her stunned as the situation spirals even further out of control. Ryu Woojin stares down his target with an intense, hollow gaze, demanding a moment of their time while his face remains a mask of unsettling calm. The student, clearly terrified, flinches as Ryu's hand clamps onto his shoulder, his expression crumbling into pure, unadulterated fear. Ryu's face, now splattered with blood, looms over the victim as he accuses him of lying and questions how he could betray his trust. The student's mind completely short-circuits, his eyes swirling with confusion as he tries to comprehend the absolute insanity of the situation. A flashback reveals the aftermath of a brutal fight, showing a defeated student sprawled out beneath a massive, spiderweb-like crack in the brick wall. The student realizes with mounting dread that he is next on the chopping block, his hands trembling as he grips his own collar in panic. Tears well up in the student's eyes as he stares at the bloodied, menacing face of the transfer student, realizing he is completely out of his depth. Ryu explodes in a fit of rage, screaming that the entire encounter has been a total waste of time because there isn't a single shred of romance material to be found. The student looks up with a dazed, bewildered expression, genuinely baffled as to why Ryu is so obsessed with the fact that only guys were gathered in the room. Ryu continues his frantic rant, calling out the student for previously claiming that couples used this storage room, which was the entire reason he fell for the trap in the first place. Ryu Woojin is absolutely losing his mind, screaming at the heavens because his dream of a romantic PE storage encounter turned into a total bloodbath. Seiya, looking completely bewildered, points out that the trap was indeed a setup to jump him, but he's baffled that Ryu isn't even bothered by the violence. Ryu casually brushes off the ambush as a daily occurrence, leaving Seiya to wonder what kind of twisted, hellish life this guy has been living. Ryu admits he was genuinely pissed off, but only because those thugs had the audacity to rip up his precious, research-filled notebook. The sheer intensity of his rage is palpable, with his eyes glowing as he contemplates whether he should just finish the job and end his tormentor. Seiya, clearly just trying to de-escalate the situation, offers him a brand new notebook to replace the one that got shredded. Ryu's mood shifts instantly as he stares at the heart-shaped pink notebook, clearly seeing it as the ultimate romantic prop. Seiya awkwardly apologizes for the cheesy design, promising to find something better, but Ryu is already drifting into his own world. Ryu holds the notebook high above his head like a holy relic, shouting about how incredibly romantic the whole situation has become. Seiya finally drags the manic, blood-stained Ryu toward the nurse's office, while Ryu continues to shriek about romance, completely oblivious to his own injuries. The two walk down the school hallway as the conversation continues, with the student questioning Ryu's bizarre dedication to becoming a romance webtoon creator. She stares at him with a mix of genuine awe and deep concern, openly wondering if he has completely lost his mind for transferring schools just to find inspiration. Ryu looks back, his face still bloodied and battered, admitting that he messed up his first impression so badly that nobody wants to talk to him. He sighs, lamenting how difficult it is to conduct his research, and even jokingly considers transferring schools all over again. The student pauses, looking at him with a thoughtful expression as she offers to step in and help him out. Ryu turns around, looking genuinely surprised that someone is actually willing to assist him with his social mission. She flashes a bright, charismatic smile, boasting that her status as the student vice president gives her the popularity needed to introduce him to every couple in the school. Ryu's eyes widen in shock, realizing that this girl is far more capable and influential than her appearance suggests. He expresses his sincere gratitude, calling her a genuinely good person, while she internally plots to use this favor to distance herself from any bullying allegations. She insists on heading to the infirmary to treat his wounds, but Ryu is already impatient, sprinting ahead and dragging her along in his manic rush to find more romance. Ryu Woojin's eyes widen in absolute shock as he realizes the situation has taken a turn for the dramatic. Moon Seo-jun rushes into the infirmary, carrying an injured Yi-jin in his arms while frantically calling for the teacher. The school nurse Yumina looks up from her desk, clearly exhausted and annoyed by the sudden, noisy intrusion. She coldly orders them to stop making a scene and place the injured student on the examination bed immediately. Ryu Woojin and his companions stand by, looking battered and coughing, as they wonder if they are also in need of medical attention. Mina turns her attention to the newcomers, noting that Yumina's voice sounds strained and telling them to wait their turn. Ryu Woojin completely loses his composure, screaming in disbelief at the chaotic turn of events while the others watch in confusion. He continues his manic outburst, shouting about how thrilled he is to have transferred to such an action-packed school. The nurse calmly applies a pain relief patch to Yi-jin's ankle, assuring her that the minor injury will heal quickly. Moon Seo-jun nervously asks if the injury is serious enough for the emergency room, but the nurse dismisses his panic, confirming it is only a simple sprain. Shin Yi-jin expresses her gratitude to Seo-jun for his help, her face glowing with a soft, romantic aura. Moon Seo-jun smiles back, reminding her of their promise and reaffirming his commitment to always keep her safe. The two lean in close, caught in a tender moment that looks straight out of a classic romance drama, while a tiny, manic Ryu Woojin watches from the corner with a heart-shaped prop. Ryu, completely losing his patience, demands they stop the chatter and just get on with the kissing already. The couple is interrupted by a furious Ryu, who screams that they are being way too loud and questions if they've lost their minds. Ryu continues his unhinged rant, noting that he actually saw blood spraying from his own head earlier, which only adds to the absurdity of the scene. Yumina laughs off the awkward encounter, introducing the bandage-wrapped Ryu as the new transfer student to the confused pair. The couple recognizes him as the aggressive newcomer who is asking who ran the school, and they immediately label him as an old-school thug. Ryu tries to brush off the misunderstanding, but they aren't buying it, questioning if he's here to join the local gang Bikyaho. Ryu ignores their questions about the gang, laughing to himself as he insists he only transferred to meet talented people like them, leaving the couple deeply unsettled and desperate for him to just leave them alone. Ryu Woojin stares intensely at the pair, his eyes wide as he demands to know exactly how long they have been dating. The couple looks back at him with pure, unadulterated shock, clearly caught off guard by his aggressive interrogation. Ryu's face contorts into a manic expression of disbelief, shouting that he cannot believe they are actually a couple. The girl tries to laugh off the awkward situation, insisting that they have just been close friends since they were little kids. Meanwhile, two other students watch the scene unfold, whispering to each other that these two are actually quite famous around the school. They note that while everyone can clearly see the romantic tension between the pair, the two of them stubbornly refuse to admit it. The guy continues to double down on his story, laughing and gesturing wildly as he claims he has known her for so long that he does not even see her as a girl anymore. The girl looks visibly hurt, her eyes welling up with tears as she asks if he truly does not see her as a woman. Ryu watches the drama unfold with a look of pure, electrified excitement, his body crackling with energy as he processes this goldmine of a romantic conflict. He holds up a perfect score sign, completely obsessed with the couple's dynamic and convinced he has found the ultimate material for his webtoon. Ryu Woojin is absolutely beaming, praising Yumina for being such a saint while he completely ignores the social cues of the room. Suddenly, the infirmary door swings wide open, and a muscular upperclassman named Choi Jin-ho strides in with a grin, looking for Moon Seo-jun. Moon Seo-jun looks visibly startled, his eyes darting around as he realizes he's been caught in the middle of a private moment. Yi Jin looks up, clearly intimidated by the sudden arrival of the imposing third-year student. Moon Seo-jun tries to explain his situation to the newcomer, stammering about how he's currently occupied with helping his injured friend. Choi Jin-ho cuts him off with an aggressive, wide-mouthed demand, clearly not interested in any excuses about his schedule. He looms over the pair, his face contorted into a menacing scowl as he insists that Seo-jun drop everything and get out there immediately. Yi-jin tries to be the bigger person, telling Seo-jun to just go, while she awkwardly offers to handle things with Mina instead. Ryu Woojin watches the entire interaction with a blank, deadpan expression, completely failing to read the room as the tension hits a breaking point. Choi Jin-ho snaps, turning his fury toward the interruption and demanding to know why someone is cutting in line, while the others look on in absolute terror. Ryu Woojin stands there with a completely blank expression, casually mentioning that he has already secured an interview. The tension spikes as Moon Seo-jun desperately tries to pull away, begging his superior to just let him go for a second. Ryu stares back with those piercing yellow eyes, completely unfazed by the aggression radiating off the upperclassmen. The atmosphere turns icy as Ryu refuses to back down, his stoic gaze locking onto his opponent without a hint of fear. Choi Jin-ho is absolutely losing his mind, questioning if the transfer student has a death wish for acting so reckless. Moon Seo-jun screams out in a panic, desperately trying to get his senior's attention before things turn violent. He frantically points out that Ryu is currently suffering from a head injury and isn't exactly playing with a full deck. Ryu stands by, looking perfectly calm while the others argue, seemingly oblivious to the fact that he just transferred today. The school nurse, Yumina, finally speaks up, pointing out the obvious evidence of the trauma Ryu has sustained. She gestures to the bloodied bandages on the table, telling the group to stop the nonsense and get back to their business. Choi Jin-ho casually strolls out of the infirmary, leaving the others in his wake while barking a final, dismissive command for them to follow his lead. He pauses just long enough to shoot a chilling, side-eyed glare back at Ryu, warning him that a second encounter will be his last. Ryu Woojin, completely unfazed by the threat, snaps back with a manic, wide-eyed expression, clearly annoyed by the interruption to his day. The tension explodes as the girl physically tackles Ryu, desperately trying to restrain him before he does something truly reckless. Ryu lets out a frustrated, guttural shout, his face contorted in pure disbelief that he's being held back from the action. He demands to know what the hell everyone is doing, completely oblivious to the fact that he's currently being pinned down for his own safety. The girl frantically explains that he's a total newcomer who has no idea just how dangerous that guy actually is. She clarifies that the man who just left is Choi Jin-ho, a high-ranking member of the notorious Baekhyun-ho crew. Ryu looks back at her with a blank, unimpressed stare, genuinely wondering why everyone is acting like the name of some local gang is a death sentence. She stares into the shadows, explaining that Baekhyun-ho doesn't just run the school, but holds terrifying connections to actual organized crime syndicates. The girl warns Ryu that the people they are dealing with are absolute monsters, and he knows exactly how dangerous they can be. Ryu looks at her with a blank, unimpressed expression, questioning why she's making such a face over a guy who just seems like a regular thug. She presses him for an answer, demanding to know what he thinks about Moon Seo-jun in light of these threats. She insists that Seo-jun is nothing like those thugs, defending his character with a fierce, defensive intensity. She explains that Seo-jun only gets dragged into these messes because his soccer skills make him a target for the school's social hierarchy. Ryu's eyes light up with manic realization, shouting in excitement because he's finally figured out that being good at sports is the secret key to popularity at co-ed schools. He gets so hyped about this new research discovery that he accidentally snaps his pen in half while clutching his heart-shaped notebook. Meanwhile, the conversation shifts as someone recalls a student from last year who was training to be a professional soccer player. They recount the legendary story of how that student once pulled off a humiliating move against the notorious Choi Jin-ho during a match. The memory of that perfect nutmeg, sliding the ball right through the legs, leaves the listener with a look of pure, wide-eyed shock. The brutal reality of the school comes to light as the story recounts how the violent Choi Jin-ho once shattered a promising soccer player's leg. Despite the life-altering injury, the aggressor faced almost no consequences, receiving nothing more than a pathetic one-week suspension for his actions. The listeners are left in utter disbelief, struggling to comprehend how such a dangerous individual is allowed to remain in the school without being expelled. Ryu Woojin, still obsessing over his webtoon, complains that this villain is completely ruining the flow of his romantic narrative. He contemplates the possibility of simply removing the obstacle, though he pauses to wonder if the author should really be interfering with the story's natural progression. A sense of existential dread washes over him as he questions if this frustration is just the inevitable pain of being a creator. He laments that while he transferred to this school to cultivate his romance cells, the environment is instead infested with toxic elements that kill any chance of love. Looking down from the rooftop, he decides that the school is in desperate need of a little bit of cleanup. Down below, Choi Jin-ho casually offers a cigarette to Moon Seo-jun, who politely declines the offer while maintaining his distance. Jin-ho exhales, his demeanor shifting as he prepares to corner Seo-jun and demand answers to a question he has been dying to ask. The senior corners Moon Seo-jun, pressing him on the nature of his relationship with Shin Yi-jin with a suspicious, interrogating glare. Seo-jun tries to play it cool, laughing off the rumors and insisting that they are strictly just friends despite the obvious tension. The senior isn't buying the act for a second, pushing Seo-jun to drop the facade and be honest about what is really going on between them. Seo-jun continues to deny any romantic involvement, but the senior is already plotting, inviting them to his place for a drink later that night. The senior makes his intentions clear, admitting that he finds the girl attractive and would love to make a move if Seo-jun isn't already claiming her. Seo-jun's expression darkens as he realizes the senior is trying to force a situation, his hand clenching into a fist in frustration. The senior ignores the hesitation, aggressively demanding that Seo-jun call her right this second to prove his story. Seo-jun tries to use her busy schedule at cram school as an excuse, but the senior shuts him down, insisting that makes it the perfect time to call. The senior looms over him, his face twisted into a menacing, impatient mask as he orders Seo-jun to make the call immediately. Seo-jun finally receives a call from the girl herself, leaving him in a tight spot as he tries to navigate the senior's predatory demands. Moon Seo-jun is caught in a tense phone call, desperately trying to navigate the awkward situation while mentioning Yi-jin's name. Yi-jin is visibly confused and alarmed on the other end of the line, questioning why they would ever agree to visit the senior's place. The senior Choi Jin-ho flashes a predatory, unsettling grin, insisting that he is actually quite friendly toward them. Moon Seo-jun tries to downplay the danger, foolishly convincing himself that just dropping by for a quick greeting will be perfectly fine. He continues the call, seemingly resigned to the plan while the senior looms over him, ready to drop another bombshell. The senior explains his twisted strategy, telling Seo-jun to have her pretend to drink while they make a quick exit. Yi-jin looks completely bewildered and embarrassed, clearly uncomfortable with the strange line of questioning being directed at her. Choi Jin-ho leans in with a smug, manipulative expression, claiming that he is just trying to set the right mood for their little get-together. He boasts about his track record, bragging that this exact method has helped him reel in countless girls before. The scene shifts to a new perspective as an unknown individual finally tracks down Seo-jun, immediately recognizing him and calling him out by name. A flashback reveals a heartwarming scene where Yi-jin's father plays with her at a playground, showing the kind of family life she once had. The perspective shifts to someone patting Moon Seo-jun on the head, noting how much Yi-jin constantly talks about his helpful nature. The father continues to express his deep gratitude, placing his trust in Seo-jun to keep looking after his daughter. The tone shifts abruptly to a somber memorial portrait of Yi-jin's father, draped in black ribbons, signaling a tragic loss. Moon Seo-jun stares at the memorial, processing the dark reality that the driver who killed him was a wealthy chaebol who escaped real justice. In the background, a grieving Yi-jin is seen curled up in a corner, sobbing uncontrollably over the death of her parent. Seo-jun's eyes harden with a cold, protective resolve as he silently vows to keep Yi-jin safe from any further harm. He stands before the memorial, internally committing himself to being her shield no matter what obstacles come their way. Back in the present, Seo-jun is frozen on his phone, unable to speak as the weight of the past and the current situation collide. The unknown antagonist looms over him, casually bringing up the death of Yi-jin's father to taunt Seo-jun while he waits for a response. The unknown antagonist continues his vile rant, claiming that girls without fathers are easy targets who practically throw themselves at anyone who shows them a little kindness. Moon Seo-jun's face contorts with pure, unadulterated rage as he finally snaps under the weight of the senior's disgusting insults. In a blur of motion, Seo-jun lunges forward, delivering a devastating high-impact strike that catches the predator completely off guard. The phone clatters to the ground, forgotten in the chaos as the reality of the sudden, violent confrontation hits the pavement. Seo-jun's eyes burn with a lethal intensity, his patience having completely evaporated the moment the senior crossed the line. The antagonist reels back, his composure shattered as he stares up at the student he thought he had successfully intimidated. The senior touches his face in shock, clearly struggling to process the fact that his puppet has finally decided to cut the strings. With a menacing, dark aura surrounding him, the senior growls that Seo-jun has made a grave mistake by acting out against someone who supposedly treasures him. The senior's face twists into a mask of pure predatory malice, his expression promising a world of pain for this act of defiance. Before Seo-jun can even react, the senior lashes out, clamping a massive hand over his face to silence him and assert his dominance once again. The antagonist delivers a brutal, crushing blow, sending Moon Seo-jun sprawling onto the pavement in a heap of pure agony. He looms over his victim with a twisted, sadistic grin, mocking Seo-jun for his pathetic attempt to deny his feelings for the girl. The bully continues his relentless assault, taunting Seo-jun about whether he's really willing to just hand her over to someone else. Seo-jun gasps for air, his face contorted in pain as he realizes he's being treated like an absolute joke by this monster. The senior winds up for another vicious strike, his fist blurring through the air as he prepares to hammer home his dominance. Ryu Woojin watches the carnage with manic glee, clutching his heart-shaped notebook and cackling like a madman at the unfolding drama. He frantically scribbles down notes, convinced that he is witnessing the ultimate, high-stakes romantic conflict of the century. Ryu is practically vibrating with excitement, narrating the scene as if it were the climax of a legendary webtoon he's writing in real time. He cheers on the chaos, shouting that this is the exact moment the main character needs to awaken and finally crush his enemies. With his eyes wide and blood-stained, Ryu screams at the top of his lungs, demanding that Seo-jun stop playing the victim and fight back. The senior grabs Moon Seo-jun by the hair, forcing his head down in a display of total dominance. He mocks Seo-jun, questioning his actions while the younger student remains pinned to the ground. With a manic, twisted grin, the senior taunts Seo-jun, asking if he really thinks he is the main character of this story. He delivers a brutal, crushing blow, demanding that Seo-jun finally stop being a coward and fight back. Seo-jun looks up, his expression one of pure shock as he realizes the senior is mocking his very identity. The senior sneers at his precious junior, Seo-jun, while raising a heavy wooden beam high into the air. He promises to deliver a message to Yi-jin, leaving the defeated Seo-jun sprawled helplessly on the pavement. With a sadistic laugh, the senior declares he will personally inform her that Seo-jun was too busy to show up. He winds up for a devastating strike with the beam, his face contorted into a mask of pure, unhinged malice. Suddenly, the senior freezes in his tracks, his eyes widening as a mysterious pen drops into his field of vision. The senior stares down at the pen that just interrupted his assault, completely baffled by the mundane object. His confusion quickly morphs into pure, unadulterated rage as he demands to know who dared to throw it. Before he can even process the situation, he's blindsided by a flying kick from out of nowhere. Ryu Woojin steps into the frame, his eyes glowing with that signature, terrifying intensity as he claims credit for the interference. The senior is sent soaring through the air, completely caught off guard by the sheer force of the impact. Ryu watches the trajectory of his target with a cold, analytical gaze, clearly unimpressed by the senior's lack of reflexes. The senior's eyes widen in absolute horror as he realizes the guy who just leveled him is the same weirdo from the infirmary. Ryu doesn't hesitate, following up with a brutal high-speed combination that leaves the senior reeling in the dust. The force of the strike sends the senior crashing into the pavement, his body sliding across the ground as the fight is abruptly turned on its head. The senior gasps for air, his composure completely shattered as he realizes he's just been schooled by the new transfer student. Ryu Woojin lunges forward with terrifying speed, slamming into the senior and cutting off his pathetic attempt at intimidation. The senior's face contorts into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock as he realizes he's completely lost control of the situation. Ryu doesn't give him a second to breathe, pinning him down and demanding to know exactly what he did to Moon Seo-jun. With a brutal, decisive motion, Ryu drives his hand into the senior's face, effectively silencing his arrogant threats. The impact is devastating, sending the senior crashing into the ground with enough force to rattle his very soul. Ryu looms over his defeated opponent, flashing a cold, predatory grin as he mockingly asks if that level of violence is what the senior was looking for. The senior stares up from the pavement, trembling in fear as he finally understands that he's bitten off way more than he can chew. Ryu stands tall, sarcastically remarking on how these co-ed schools seem to have a weird, unhealthy obsession with using weapons. He winds up for another strike, his expression shifting into a look of pure, calculated malice as he prepares to finish the job. Without a hint of mercy, Ryu delivers a final, crushing blow that leaves the senior completely broken and begging for an end to the nightmare. Ryu Woojin absolutely obliterates the ground, leaving his opponent buried in a fresh crater of his own making. The victim lies in the rubble, completely shell-shocked and struggling to process the sheer magnitude of the beatdown he just received. Ryu looms over the wreckage, casually questioning if the guy is really surprised by the level of destruction he just unleashed. Moon Seo-jun watches from the sidelines, his eyes wide with disbelief as he realizes this transfer student is an absolute monster in disguise. He reflects on how he initially pegged the guy for a common thug, only to realize that his instincts were terrifyingly accurate. Ryu walks toward the dazed student, his footsteps echoing as he approaches the guy who is still struggling to get up. The student looks up, trembling as he asks if Ryu was the one who actually stepped in to save him from the assault. Ryu stares down with those piercing yellow eyes, his gaze intense enough to make anyone in the vicinity sweat bullets. He reaches out a hand, causing the student to flinch instinctively, clearly terrified of what the powerhouse might do next. Instead of another strike, Ryu pulls out a pen, his expression unreadable as he prepares to make his next move. Ryu Woojin flashes a confident, slightly unhinged grin, proudly declaring his identity as an aspiring romance webtoon creator. Moon Seo-jun looks on, his expression shifting from confusion to a dazed, wide-eyed realization as he processes the absurdity of the claim. Ryu continues his manic internal monologue, questioning the realism of his own script while a tiny, bewildered version of himself appears in his thoughts. A close-up shows Ryu's hand firmly gripping his heart-patterned notebook, signaling that he is already mentally drafting the next big plot point. Moon Seo-jun stares back, clearly struggling to grasp how this guy can be so obsessed with finding the perfect romantic highlight. Yi-jin enters the conversation, her face twisted in genuine frustration as she demands to know why he keeps labeling everything as a scene. Ryu turns toward her with a smug, self-satisfied smirk, explaining that he has already meticulously set the stage for his narrative. Moon Seo-jun looks completely lost, his eyes wide as he begs for a shred of clarity regarding what on earth Ryu is talking about. The two guys stand in the parking lot, oblivious to the fact that they are being watched from a distance by an observant Yi-jin. Yi-jin stands in the middle of the lot, looking visibly flustered as she realizes she has stumbled right into the middle of a classic confession scene. Ryu Woojin stares down at the scene from above, casually telling Moon Seo-jun to finally confess his true feelings to the girl. Moon Seo-jun completely loses his mind, his face contorting in pure shock as he screams in disbelief at the sudden demand. He frantically questions why he is being pressured to confess and demands to know why Yi-jin is even present for this conversation. Ryu nonchalantly explains that he was the one who threw a note earlier while he was busy jumping off the school rooftop. He gestures toward the window where he had previously launched his message, confirming his bizarre method of communication. Ryu holds up his hand, demonstrating the precise flicking motion he used to send his projectile flying through the air. The note hits its target with pinpoint accuracy, leaving the recipient stunned by the sheer absurdity of the delivery. The heart-shaped paper reveals a frantic warning that Seo-jun is in danger and needs help at the back of the school. Moon Seo-jun looks at Ryu with a mix of confusion and exhaustion, genuinely questioning if the guy is actually human. Ryu remains stoic and unfazed, while Seo-jun desperately tries to insist once again that they are nothing more than friends. Moon Seo-jun stares in disbelief, questioning why his friend would throw away his safety for such a trivial reason against an unbeatable opponent. Ryu Woojin maintains his calm, piercing gaze, challenging the notion that the situation is as hopeless as Seo-jun believes. Ryu offers a piece of unsolicited advice, his expression serious as he prepares to drop a harsh truth on his friend. He coldly asserts that anyone who lacks the courage to be honest with themselves has absolutely no right to claim they are protecting anyone. Seo-jun admits he understands the sentiment, but insists that his dishonesty isn't a choice, but a desperate attempt to keep their current life intact. He worries aloud about the consequences of acting on his feelings, terrified of who would take responsibility if he ruins their delicate bond. The girl, clearly frustrated by his hesitation, snaps that sometimes people have no choice but to lie to themselves to survive. She confronts him with raw intensity, demanding to know what he could possibly understand about her life when he only transferred to the school today. Ryu looks on with a deadpan expression, clearly annoyed that the real-life drama is failing to follow the romantic script he had envisioned. The girl continues her heated outburst, demanding to know if he really thought sucker-punching a monster like Choi Jin-ho was a valid way to protect her. Yi-jin sits on the ground, her voice trembling as she questions if the tragedy of her father is the reason for all this chaos. A flashback reveals her father's final, gentle request for someone to look after his daughter, a promise that now weighs heavily on the present. Moon Seo-jun looks up from the pavement, his eyes wide and vulnerable as he struggles to process the weight of that long-held vow. Yi-jin lets out an agonizing, desperate cry, her composure finally shattering as the emotional dam breaks wide open. Tears stream down her face as she pleads with him, insisting that she never wanted him to get hurt just to keep her safe. Seo-jun stares back, his eyes glistening with unshed tears as he confesses that he simply cannot bear to see someone so precious to him suffer again. In a moment of pure, raw honesty, he finally admits that he wants to protect her because he genuinely has feelings for her. Yijin freezes, her eyes widening in total shock as she tries to comprehend the weight of that sudden, life-changing admission. The tension snaps as Seojun immediately panics, flailing on the ground while desperately backpedaling to claim he only meant it in a friendly way. Ryu Woojin watches the pathetic display from the sidelines, his expression cold and unimpressed as he judges their inability to just be honest with themselves. The romantic tension finally boils over as the pair lays their true feelings out in the open, admitting they want to be more than just friends. Moon Seo-jun lies on the ground, looking up with a dazed expression as he reflects on how long it has taken for them to reach this point. Yi-jin leans over him, finally letting go of her hesitation and admitting that she never saw him as just a friend, even if it took forever to say it. She expresses how much she has been dying to get those words off her chest, while Seo-jun fumbles with his sweater, completely overwhelmed by the moment. The two share an incredibly tender, intimate moment, finally closing the distance between them as the world around them seems to fade away. Suddenly, the mood is shattered as Seo-jun snaps back to reality, his face contorted in total shock as he realizes what just happened. Yi-jin laughs at his panicked reaction, teasing him for being such a dummy while she basks in the glow of their long-awaited confession. She admits that she really wanted to be the one to drop the L-bomb first, her face beaming with pure, unadulterated joy. Seo-jun stands up, stumbling over his words as he tries to process the sudden shift in their relationship, while Ryu Woojin watches from the background like a total creep. Just as the couple tries to define their new status, a massive, fiery explosion erupts behind them and a manic Ryu Woojin screams in delight, absolutely obsessed with how romantic the chaos looks. The pair stares in absolute bewilderment, completely unable to process the sudden, explosive chaos unfolding right in front of them. Moon Seo-jun and Yi-jin scramble to check on each other, their faces etched with panic as they try to make sense of the violent interruption. Ryu Woojin, however, is having the time of his life, cackling with manic glee while clutching his precious, dark-shadowed prize. The school nurse, Yumina, is just trying to enjoy a quiet cup of coffee in the infirmary, completely unaware of the madness brewing outside. Her peaceful break is shattered in an instant as a door is violently kicked off its hinges, sending coffee flying everywhere. She looks up, visibly annoyed and coughing, demanding to know what kind of trouble Moon Seo-jun has managed to drag into her office this time. Seo-jun bursts in, breathless and frantic, carrying a limp, shadow-covered body while desperately shouting that Ryu Woojin is severely injured. The nurse sighs, clearly exhausted by the constant stream of violence, and orders them to lay the patient down immediately. The scene flashes back to the infamous Dupal High, the breeding ground for all this relentless, high-stakes school warfare. High up on the third floor, a student is sent flying through the air with a bone-crushing kick, marking the start of another brutal encounter. A student watches from a balcony as Lee Ruda sprints across the field, shouting that he just got discharged from the hospital today. Jinjin, busy lifting weights, turns to the observer and notes that Lee Ruda looks surprisingly lively for someone who was just hospitalized. The observer laments that they have a massive problem on their hands, specifically that everyone has figured out Ryu Woojin transferred schools. A flashback shows the aftermath of a brutal fight where a student was left in a pile of defeated bodies, with the realization that Lee Ruda was hospitalized during that exact clash. Lee Ruda is shown with both arms heavily bandaged, a grim reminder of the injuries that kept him out of the action. Jinjin questions if this means Ryu Woojin didn't actually fight every single student that day, though he admits they wouldn't have won even if Ruda had been there. The observer stares off into the distance, his expression darkening as he realizes the true, terrifying nature of the situation. Lee Ruda suddenly bursts into manic, unhinged laughter, convinced that Ryu Woojin only transferred because he was deathly afraid of facing him. With a predatory, wide-eyed grin and sharp teeth bared, Lee Ruda doubles down on his delusion, completely ignoring the fact that his rival might just be an idiot. As April arrives, the winter chill finally fades away, replaced by blooming flowers and the hopeful, quiet promise of a new spring season. April rolls around, and apparently, it's the absolute peak season for everyone to start acting like they're in a cheesy romance drama. Ryu Woojin is perched on a railing like a total creep, his eyes wide and manic as he realizes he's hit the jackpot for his weird little hobby. Everywhere you look, fresh couples are crawling out of the woodwork to infest the cherry blossom festivals with their nauseating displays of affection. Ryu's eyes lock onto the target, his pupils dilated as he eavesdrops on the cringy, high-pitched flirting happening just a few feet away. The couple is busy giggling and acting like they've been soulmates for years, completely oblivious to the fact that they've only been dating for a couple of hours. Ryu is absolutely losing his mind with excitement, scribbling away in his notebook like a madman because he's found the perfect inspiration for his webtoon. He's frantically documenting the specific, nauseating details of a boyfriend feeding his girlfriend kimbap, cackling to himself like a total lunatic. The couple finally notices the weirdo lurking in the shadows, and the girl is rightfully freaked out by the guy staring at them with such intense, unhinged energy. Ryu is completely lost in his own world, giggling to himself while he watches the typical delinquents skip school to wander around like aimless losers. The boyfriend decides he's had enough of the stalker, puffing out his chest to confront the kid while his girlfriend cheers him on for being so brave. A random guy tries to flex his jiu-jitsu brown belt credentials, clearly hoping to intimidate Ryu Woojin into backing off. Ryu just stares at him with that dead-eyed, unimpressed look, realizing this guy is just more material for his collection. Ryu muses internally that he's basically become a historian of human stupidity, deciding he might as well interview this clown. Before the guy can finish his tough guy act, Ryu casually swats the air, annoyed by a mosquito buzzing around his face. With a single, effortless motion, Ryu slams his hand into the concrete, leaving a massive crater and crushing the bug into oblivion. He looks down at the wreckage, genuinely baffled that a mosquito is even active in the middle of April. Ryu turns back to the guy, offering a polite, sarcastic apology for the sudden interruption to his little speech. He then pulls out a thick stack of cash, holding it up as if he's about to make a business proposition to the stunned student. Ryu stares at the money with a dark, intense aura, while the guy's girlfriend Jaisun watches the scene unfold in total horror. Jaisun storms off in disgust, screaming that the guy has absolutely no pride, leaving him groveling on the ground while Ryu watches the drama with pure, unhinged fascination. The guy is absolutely losing his mind, screaming in pure, unadulterated despair because his attempt to play the hero just nuked his own relationship. Ryu Woojin strolls away with the casual indifference of a man who just accidentally deleted a save file, muttering that he really needs to dial back his insane physical output. The poor guy is left groveling on the ground in a pathetic heap, while Ryu stands in the background, looking like he's ready to lecture everyone on the importance of character development. A stack of cash lies abandoned on the pavement, a silent testament to the absolute absurdity of Ryu's attempt to bribe his way through a social interaction. The school building looms in the background, a brick-and-mortar monument to the toxic, chaotic environment where these kids are forced to grow up. Moon Seo-jun is back in action, fueled by the hype of his girl cheering him on like he's the protagonist of a sports anime. He winds up for a massive strike, his body coiled and ready to launch a projectile with enough force to shatter the sound barrier. The ball rockets into the net with a satisfying, explosive impact, proving that Seo-jun's soccer skills are the only thing keeping his social life from total collapse. Ryu is practically vibrating with fanboy energy, losing his cool as he breaks down the legendary curve of that shot like a professional sports commentator. In a final, hilarious burst of romantic desperation, the guy pulls his hoodie over his head, revealing a shirt that screams his feelings to the entire world. Ryu Woojin strolls through the school grounds, casually commenting on how incredibly romantic the scene between the two students looks. He watches them from a distance, his mind already racing as he decides that using love as a goal celebration is absolute top-tier material for his webtoon. The pair finally notices him, and they are visibly baffled, questioning why he is only just now arriving at school. Ryu brushes off the confusion, shifting the topic to check if they are still safe from Choi Jin-ho, while a tiny, frantic doodle of a couple plays out in the background. Yi-jin looks at him with genuine concern, pointing out that it makes no sense for him to be walking around freely after clashing with the powerful Bikya-ho. She worries that the gang might try to use her as leverage to get to him, but Ryu remains completely unfazed by the threat. He coolly tells her that he will handle any trouble himself, insisting that their only job is to stay happy and keep their relationship going. Ryu smiles with a strange, intense warmth, telling them that their happiness is the only way they can truly help him. Suddenly, the peaceful moment is violently interrupted as a soccer ball slams directly into Ryu Woojin's face with a deafening thud. The culprit screams in pure, unhinged rage, demanding that Ryu stop flirting with Yi-jin and get his head back in the game. The aggressor mocks the situation, laughing at the fact that the boyfriend is clearly losing his cool while the couple prepares to part ways. Ryu Woojin turns around with a blank expression, suddenly remembering he had a specific question to ask. He locks eyes with Yu Mina, cutting straight to the point and demanding to know her current location. Mina is busy setting up her camera on a tripod, calmly hitting the timer button to capture her next move. She starts dancing in front of the phone, completely absorbed in the rhythm of her own content creation. With a playful spin and a pose, she shows off her moves, oblivious to the chaos brewing just outside her frame. She strikes a final, cutesy pose for the camera, clearly feeling herself as she frames the perfect shot. Suddenly, Ryu Woojin pops into the room, and Mina lets out a blood-curdling scream of pure, unadulterated shock. She panics, demanding to know how he tracked her down, while Ryu casually reaches for her phone to see if she is uploading a video. Ryu stares at the device in his hand, sarcastically asking if she is really trying to use him as fresh material for her channel. Ryu Woojin and his companion discuss the current social dynamics, with Ryu insisting that he needs even more dramatic material to work with. The girl looks visibly stressed, admitting that while she agreed to help him, the situation is spiraling way out of control. She reflects on how she initially played along just to avoid being reported for bullying, never expecting things to escalate to this level. The memory of the chaos flashes before her eyes, highlighting the sheer insanity of Ryu taking on entire gangs like Kang Gi-ho's crew. She realizes with horror that the violence didn't stop there, as Ryu went on to challenge the powerful Bikia-ho as well. A sense of dread settles in as she concludes that getting any closer to Ryu Woojin is a one-way ticket to disaster. She realizes that Ryu isn't the type to care about school rules or reporting bullies, making him an unpredictable wild card. Desperate to escape the fallout, she decides that she needs to come up with a convincing excuse to distance herself from the madness. Her foot slips on the stairs, a physical manifestation of her internal panic as she loses her footing in the heat of the moment. She looks up in a daze, completely caught off guard as Moon Seojun suddenly appears to check on her, leaving her stunned by his unexpected concern. Ryu Woojin leans in close, flashing a charming smile while telling his companion that she is genuinely a good person. The girl looks completely caught off guard, scrambling away in a flurry of movement while awkwardly thanking him for the compliment. She stands there looking utterly bewildered, clearly struggling to process the weirdness of the entire interaction. A flashback reveals Ryu Woojin hunched over his precious notebook, his eyes locked on the pages as he obsessively documents his latest findings. The scene shifts to a manic, wide-eyed Ryu clutching his pen, laughing uncontrollably as he realizes the potential for his next big narrative twist. He leans over the girl again, his intense gaze fixed on her as he continues to push the boundaries of their strange, budding dynamic. She stands by the window, clutching a mop and muttering to herself in disbelief that he isn't even bothering to write down the important details. Ryu stretches his arms out with a casual, carefree attitude, announcing that he might actually grace the classroom with his presence for the first time in ages. Yi-jin stares at him in absolute shock, her jaw dropping as she realizes he hasn't stepped foot in a classroom since his middle school days. As they walk down the hallway together, Ryu nonchalantly explains that he has spent all his time outside, tirelessly hunting for the perfect material for his stories. The girl stares down Ryu Woojin, calling him out for being a total delinquent who skips class to fight, while he tries to justify his truancy. Ryu explains that he's been habitually absent because Dupal High is basically a war zone where fighting is the only curriculum that matters. He admits that he'd love to say it's not a place for studying, but his intense, glowing eyes suggest there is a much deeper, more twisted reason behind his actions. Ryu drops the bombshell that only weaklings actually sit in class, prompting his companion to point out that he's essentially trashing the entire national education system. He flashes a smug, knowing grin, asking if a self-proclaimed romance author like him can really afford to ignore the goldmine of tropes hidden in the classroom. He starts listing off the classic, cringy staples of school romance, like the thrill of secretly passing notes under the desk. He continues his breakdown with the legendary eraser flirting maneuver, where one student drops an eraser just to get the other to notice them. He adds the ultimate bonding experience of sharing a single textbook, clearly convinced that these tiny moments are the peak of human drama. The girl looks absolutely exasperated, demanding to know if he's seriously going to let all that prime romantic material slip through his fingers. Suddenly, Ryu snaps back to his manic self, screaming that he will attend class diligently, all while realizing that Mina is likely waiting for him up the stairs. Ryu Woojin flashes a smug, self-satisfied grin, thanking Shin Yi-jin because her presence is providing him with an absolute goldmine of fresh material. He looks absolutely pumped, his eyes glowing with that signature intensity as he admits his blood is boiling with excitement to see how a co-ed school actually functions. Meanwhile, the classroom is in total chaos, with students panicking because they completely forgot about their chemistry homework. A desperate student tries to bribe the class rep with 5,000 won just to get a peek at their notes before the teacher walks in. The classroom atmosphere shifts instantly as the chemistry teacher, Yasuo, makes his grand entrance, demanding that everyone sit down immediately. Yasuo stares down the class with a menacing, silver-haired glare, formally introducing himself as the man who will be running their chemistry lessons. He recounts his tragic childhood, explaining how he was relentlessly bullied by other kids just because of his unique name. Naturally, he responded to the constant teasing by brutally beating up every single one of those bastards to defend his family's honor. He reveals that after years of settling every minor insult with his fists, he eventually earned the reputation of being a total delinquent. A flashback shows a younger, long-haired Yasuo looming over a pile of defeated students, marking the beginning of his own violent, stormy life story. Yasuo reflects on a pivotal moment in his past, where a mentor figure reached out to offer him a path toward academic success. He recalls how this same mentor didn't hesitate to physically dominate him and his peers before finally offering that guidance. The memory shifts to his graduation day, where he stands in his cap and gown, forever changed by his teacher's unconventional methods. Yasuo stands at the front of the classroom, embodying the strict, no-nonsense philosophy he learned from his own mentor. He notes with a hint of pride that even tough guys like Kang Gi-ho eventually learned to fall in line under his watch. The lecture is interrupted by the sudden appearance of a student at the door, catching the teacher off guard. The class looks on in stunned silence as the mysterious transfer student awkwardly wanders into the room. Recognition hits the room like a lightning bolt, with everyone realizing the notorious psycho transfer kid has finally shown his face. A classmate flashes back to a violent encounter, terrified to see the guy who supposedly vanished after causing so much chaos. The students whisper in a panic, unable to believe that the kid who skipped every class since transferring is actually standing right there. Yasuo stares down at the classroom with a terrifying, predatory intensity, clearly deciding that Ryu Woojin needs a serious lesson in discipline. Ryu Woojin, completely unfazed by the tension, points a finger and makes a bizarre, nonsensical request for food while telling everyone to hit the deck. The classroom falls into a deathly silence as Ryu remains pinned to the floor, while Yasuo looms over him like a final boss wielding a wooden sword. Ryu looks up from his prone position, his eyes wide and manic as he lets out a cackle, clearly amused by the absurdity of the situation. Kang Gi-ho watches the scene unfold, laughing his head off and mocking Ryu for being late to the one class where he's guaranteed to get his butt kicked. Yasuo shuts down the chatter with a single word, forcing Kang Gi-ho to instantly fall in line and pipe down. The narrative shifts to Ryu's internal monologue, where he notes that it's been a while since he was last put in his place by a teacher. Ryu's gaze drifts to the wooden sword, and in his typical unhinged fashion, he comments on the strange, savory scent coming off the weapon. Yasuo is visibly baffled, explaining that the smell is just katsuobushi from his takoyaki, and he demands to know why Ryu is so obsessed with food. With a sudden, explosive movement, Yasuo slams his wooden sword down, demanding absolute silence as the classroom tension hits its breaking point. Yasuo looms over the pinned Ryu Woojin, bragging about the lethal, skull-crushing density of his custom-made wooden sword. The teacher demands to know why Ryu has been skipping class, while Ryu weakly mutters an excuse about his unique learning environment. Yasuo scoffs at the idea of homeschooling and immediately challenges the boy to solve a complex chemistry problem on the board. Ryu stares at the equations with a blank, unreadable expression, while the teacher smugly insists he needs to test if the kid can actually keep up. Yasuo stands by, clearly hoping to break Ryu's spirit with mental humiliation since he thinks that's more effective than a physical beatdown. The teacher cackles like a maniac, ready to expose Ryu's supposed stupidity and turn him into the laughingstock of the entire class. Ryu nonchalantly scribbles the correct answer on the board, leaving the entire room in a state of absolute stunned silence. Yasuo's jaw practically hits the floor, grumbling in frustration that he actually found a delinquent who knows how to study. Refusing to give up, the teacher aggressively slashes at the board with his wooden sword, pointing to an even more difficult problem to force a failure. Ryu doesn't even break a sweat, effortlessly solving the next equation and casually dismissing the challenge as a total joke. Ryu Woojin hits the floor with a heavy thud, his body finally succumbing to the intense pressure of the classroom confrontation. He looks up at the teacher, casually remarking that he mastered this level of chemistry back in middle school while questioning the bizarre nature of co-ed classes. With a smug, unhinged grin, Ryu mutters his thanks, clearly thrilled that he has just secured some top-tier material for his webtoon. Yasuo's face contorts in pure, vein-popping rage as he realizes his attempt to humiliate the transfer student has completely backfired. Hong Ju-won, the class representative, steps in to de-escalate the mounting tension, urging everyone to just get back to the lesson. The entire class erupts into a frenzy of laughter, finding it hilarious that even the top-ranking student couldn't keep a straight face during the chaos. Yasuo stands alone in his frustration, laughing bitterly as he realizes he is the one becoming the laughingstock of his own classroom. The teacher stares down at Ryu, his voice dripping with menace as he asks if the boy is actually telling him to just give up. Ryu Woojin glances back over his shoulder, his expression completely unbothered by the teacher's looming, murderous aura. Yasuo delivers a final chilling command for Ryu to stay after class, his eyes burning with the promise of a much more personal lesson. Yasuo looms over Ryu Woojin, his face twisted in a menacing glare as he vows to deliver a secret, brutal beating. The chemistry teacher stands in the center of the gym, wooden sword in hand, while Ryu stands opposite him, sarcastically asking if this is supposed to be extra tutoring. Ryu Woojin brushes off his previous absences, confidently claiming he can easily keep up with the curriculum despite his truancy. Yasuo lunges forward with terrifying speed, his wooden sword whistling through the air as he attempts to strike Ryu down. Ryu remains calm, looking up at the teacher while dryly pointing out that corporal punishment is officially banned in schools. The teacher ignores the logic, gripping his wooden weapon tightly and dismissing the very concept of corporal punishment as he prepares for another strike. Yasuo presses the wooden sword against Ryu's face, his eyes burning with rage as he warns him to stop treating the weapon like a food ingredient. The teacher recounts his own history as a troubled youth, explaining how he managed to turn his life around after meeting the right mentor. Yasuo gestures toward the chemistry equations on the board, insisting that Ryu has untapped potential that just needs the right guidance. With a manic, over-the-top declaration, Yasuo lunges at Ryu again, claiming he will personally guide the boy using his so-called rod of love. The gym erupts in a blinding flash of light as Ryu Woojin and Yasuo clash, their collision sending shockwaves through the entire room. Yasuo is genuinely impressed by the boy's reflexes, admitting that Ryu is far more capable than the average delinquent he usually deals with. Ryu's eyes widen in realization as he processes the teacher's words, suddenly understanding that his past has been dug up. The intensity of the fight spikes as Ryu maneuvers with lightning speed, narrowly avoiding a devastating blow from the teacher's wooden sword. Ryu is visibly rattled, his mind racing as he questions if the teacher somehow uncovered his secret history at Duple High. He recalls the mystery of his erased records, realizing that someone went to great lengths to scrub his past from the school files. Ryu stands his ground, staring down the silver-haired teacher while wondering who exactly had the power to manipulate his student records. Yasuo points his wooden weapon directly at Ryu, his expression hardening as he demands to know the true nature of the boy standing before him. Ryu remains cool, his mind drifting to the missing Katsuobushi as he wonders where the teacher's bizarre weapon component vanished to during their scuffle. Ryu flashes a calm, slightly mocking smile, brushing off the teacher's intensity and admitting that he was actually caught off guard for a brief moment. Yasuo stands frozen in the gym, staring in absolute horror as the remnants of his precious Katsuobushi rain down on the floor, pulverized by Ryu Woojin's bare hands. The teacher's face contorts with genuine fear, his eyes wide as he realizes that the transfer student is far more dangerous than he ever imagined. He looks out at the school building, terrified that Ryu's presence will inevitably transform their peaceful campus into a lawless hellscape just like Duple High. Yasuo screams internally, desperate to prevent his school from becoming a hopeless cesspool where violence is the only language spoken. He fixates on the grim reality that the school is essentially a pipeline for organized crime, and he refuses to let Ryu accelerate that decay. With a sudden burst of movement, Yasuo lunges toward Ryu, fully committed to ending this threat even if it means sacrificing his own teaching career. Ryu Woojin watches the teacher's desperate charge with a calm, almost bored expression, his tongue darting out in a moment of casual focus. In a flash of motion, Ryu effortlessly counters, sending the teacher sprawling across the gym floor in a heap of defeat. Ryu stands over the fallen Yasuo, looking down with a blank stare and politely asking if the teacher is all right after that pathetic display. He offers to escort the dazed teacher to the nurse's office, while Yasuo lies on the ground, gasping out a final, weary question about why Ryu chose to bring such chaos to their school. Ryu Woojin stares blankly, dead set on his bizarre mission to hunt down the perfect romance material for his webtoon. The teacher, still reeling on the floor, is absolutely baffled by this kid's priorities, while Ryu tries to explain his background in all-boys schools. Ryu beams with a bright, sunny smile, enthusiastically declaring that his ultimate dream is to become a successful romance webtoon artist. The teacher watches him with a mix of confusion and dread, realizing that those wide, manic eyes are completely sincere. Yasuo narrows his eyes in a huff, begrudgingly admitting that the kid's dedication to his weird hobby is actually kind of impressive. Ryu stands in the gym, casually musing that it has been a while since he last had to throw hands with a teacher, noting how much it feels like the old days at Duple High. He wonders aloud if his old crew is doing all right, his mind drifting back to the chaos he left behind. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the air as Lee Ruda appears on the balcony, his twin braids swaying as he locks eyes with Ryu. Ryu freezes in shock, his expression shifting to pure disbelief as he realizes his past has finally caught up to him in the form of Lee Ruda.